declarational. I speak my reality, and that's exactly what I help other people do. Make them aware. I don't do any coaching and therapy, anything like that. And I have nothing against the industry, but a lot of the information we already know. We just need to be reminded. And that's been my whole purpose, to remind people of the power that they have inside and to utilize that power. And it's a version of themselves that is waiting to be explored, as you said earlier, waiting to be explored. Yes. And you can find me at IamAligned.com. I almost forgot about that. IamAligned.com. It's on my hat if you haven't seen it. IamAligned.com.
Let me ask you my first question then.
Yes.
Martez, I am aligned. How did you come up with all of that? And how did you get involved in helping people to be aligned?
It's two powerful questions. I'm going to go backwards. I got into, let me rephrase that. I was fortunate to have discovered my purpose. And my purpose, as I was stating earlier, is to bring awareness to people of just how powerful they are, and that the version that they're living right now is one version, but there's another version that doesn't allow you to react to other people's behavior. There's a version of us that doesn't blame, judge, label, and criticize. When we are in that space, I remind people that that's not love. And the opposite of love is fear. And this is how I came about to have discovered this, going through another divorce, on the verge of a second divorce. It dawned on me that when I began to become a student of what I was feeling, I was blaming my wife for not giving me the respect that I was taught in this culture and in this culture itself, that a man's supposed to be respected. And I believed it, right? Would you believe that too, right? A man should be respected. Here's the thing. I believe it, but I must ask myself the question, have I learned to respect myself? Have I learned the tools to respect myself? Have I ever been taught that I deserve respect? And once I was able to become a student of that emotion, it began to open up so many different things in my life, where it caused me to go down a journey of what I call awareness. And we go back to our childhood, and most of us can say we have experienced dysfunction in our lives. We have dysfunction in our family. We all can say that to a certain degree, but do we do the work to find out why? And when I began to find out the why, it was like this sense of awareness that came upon me. And what I'm finding out now is awareness brings responsibility. Now I'm responsible to show up in this space of awareness, and even more responsible to share it to others. So that's how I got into it.
You mentioned respect, and I think that is something that is big. And I think in
Huge.
general, it's probably up there with love. Love me,
Yes.
respect me. Do you think that some people confuse respect that's internal, self-respect, versus respect that is external, respect from other people?
Your question is, do I think they get it confused?
Yes.
Well, when we look at respect, as the word respect, you're right, it is very huge. They made songs about it. Aretha Franklin said respect is something that we all need. But going to the root of that, it connects to our self-worth, our value, things that we value and things that are worthy to us, to get a different level of respect for. And when someone doesn't show the respect that we feel that we should get, we attached it to our self-worth. And that goes back to what I was just saying, that that version of you that is able to hold other people accountable for how you're made to feel. You're not showing me respect. That's exactly what I would think of my wife, not showing me the respect of being the man in the house, not giving me the validation. But here's what was really happening. I was holding her accountable for an emotion that I was never taught to become a student of. She was only operating on her own patterns, her own triggers. I took it personally as a personal attack of my self-worth because I was always taught, hey, respect and self-worth are connected. This unconsciously, no one actually said that, but you actually see it when people are respecting someone. They hold great value, or they look at that person with a great value to them, so they respect them more. And when you feel like you're not getting respect, you look at yourself like, okay, this is attacking my self-worth. Now I've learned to react when people are not giving me the respect. So to go back to answer your question, we must first ask ourselves, what is it that we were taught about respect? And until you can understand the belief behind respect, then we it's probably not a good idea to hold other people accountable for something that you were taught, not to even give yourself.
I look at the struggles that men are going through, let's say in the last number of years,
Yes.
especially and you, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the red pill movement, big movement online for young adults.
Okay.
Um, so this movement is essentially it's men saying that we need to go back to traditional ways. We need to make sure that the women that we date have, in some cases, the more toxic side of it is that
Yeah.
her body count must be two or less. She must be 110 pounds. She must be 5'6" and shorter, and she
Okay.
must have big breasts and a big ass. Right?
Okay.
That's the woman.
Okay.
The
Okay.
expectations of the men, I could be fat, sloppy, and balding and play video games in underwear that I wore on Monday and it's Friday now. Right? So the expectations are different. I
Yes.
paint that picture because I'm 40 now.
Okay.
If I was in my 20s and I was struggling with my relationships with women, this sounds very attractive because it's giving me a hope in a maybe not so healthy way. Because to your point, right, it's saying that I should be respected no matter who I am just because I'm a man,
Right.
right? And this is the type of respect that I should get. You should clean, you should cook, you should iron, you should do all these things. But I think what's missing, and I'll get your input on this, in a lot of men's life is the respect that you're seeking. Have you earned it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And do you see some men, or maybe you've experienced this, struggling with trying to get respect that maybe they yet haven't earned?
When you say earn, what do you mean by earn respect? In what manner do you see respect should be earned? In what manner?
So, for
Explain it better.
example, if I were, let's say, a relationship perspective, I'm treating my
Okay.
woman well. So, therefore, in turn, she's going to want to treat me well. But if I'm coming from a place of control and not from care, she may be triggered, and that may show up as disrespect to me.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I want to go back to what you said about the red pill and the belief. Beliefs are like apps on our cell phones. The moment you get your phone, whether you team Android or you team iPhone, you pull it out the box, you're excited about it, right? You plug it up, charged up, 100%, bam, ready to go. Apps are already on that phone, designed for that phone, as if Apple and Android or Apple and Samsung knew that you needed these apps. My point is that the moment we come into this world, into this family, into this culture, there are already beliefs that already we inherited about love. about respect, about ourselves, about family. And until we, again, challenge some of the beliefs, because in my opinion, those beliefs are rooted in fear, which causes us to want to control situations, circumstances, and people. And it also causes us to seek external validation in people, because when you really think about a new life, at no point in that new baby's life are they taught about themselves, self-love, self-care. You don't learn this stuff in school. You don't learn it at home because your parents were never taught about self-love, self-worth. They could only give what they got, so within, so without. So when you look at the dynamics of a new life, if it's not cultivated in self-love, by default, it thrives and occupies this space of fear. And when fear is triggered, it blames, it judges, it criticizes, it labels, it controls, and we become this very reactive culture. So going back to your point, as far as what the man sees in a woman, he must first, before you even get into a relationship with someone, build that relationship with yourself. Because what's going to continue to happen is whatever you are battling within will show up outside of you. It may be this woman this week. Next year, it may be someone else. It may be your neighbor. It may be the person at the store. We're going to constantly have this internal war until we understand what's going on inside. Let's become a student of it. So many of us, and it's no blame on our culture, on our families, but it is our responsibility to become a student of why it is that, for example, when you think about your loved ones, who do you think about? I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna put you right on the
Yeah, no,
spot.
put me on the spot. That's okay. I have you on the spot. You put me in the hot chair
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
When I think about loved ones, I think about my grandmother who passed away. Even though she's
Yes,
not physically here, she's still here with me.
right. So you think about family, friends. You may even think about your pets, right? Here's the paradox about this whole thing. We never think about ourselves as someone who belongs on our list of loved ones. It's not to say we don't love ourselves. We just don't show up for people we don't know. We show up for those people on that list because we know them. We sacrifice our time, our energy, even our money to make sure everyone on that list is taken care of. The reason why so many people aren't taking care of themselves because they're not on that list. You are invisible to yourself, and it's not that you don't love yourself, but it's apparent that you don't fully know and understand yourself because you were never taught to learn yourself. You were always taught to give because it's better to give than receive. And I believe that too. But even that is half the answer. It's better to give to yourself first and then give to others. But we're only taught it's better to give than receive. So my point, going back to your question, I can kind of go in a different direction. So I want to come back to it. But just going back to it, it all stems from the beliefs that causes us to want to put that accountability on someone else because we have never been taught to hold ourselves accountable. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And the way you described it, when you mentioned a list, like as you're talking, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I were to say who are my loved ones on, and I listed a top five list, I
Yeah.
would be on there. I
Okay.
wonder how many people would put themselves on a list of people to love, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you were to say, okay, give me a list of 10, would they be 10? Give me a list of 100. Where would they be on the top 100 people? And I think to your point, a lot of people will find they may even name the neighbor down the street who they don't even get along with really, but they're cordial before they put their
Yeah.
names on the list.
Yeah.
What do you think then are some of the obstacles that people are facing when it comes to identifying themselves as someone to be loved by themselves?
You just hit it on the head. It's all about your identity. And whatever you identify with creates your reality. And once you identify with someone who's in a space of fear, when you're talking about, you mentioned childhood trauma, and I do a lot of discussions about childhood trauma. And I'm mindful that so many of us have experienced what we can frame as childhood trauma. Like I grew up here in Chicago in the inner city. They call them the public housings, the projects, low income. So it's a very toxic, traumatic environment. Everyone's trying to survive, gangs, drugs, you name it. And so I can look back and say I had a very dysfunctional, traumatic childhood, raised by a single parent. Um, Father was on drugs. He was out of the picture. Mom raising three boys. She herself was raised in a dysfunctional household. So now she's passing down this same dysfunction to her kids. Now that I am in my 50s now, I'll be 51 this year. I have the opportunity, we all do, to look back at our stories and reframe it, put ourselves back in a space of power. Because when you identify as someone who had experienced childhood trauma, well, then you are also identifying with being the victim of that trauma. And once the identity is of a victim only sees villains in every interaction, every relationship. Again, this is not about blame because first thing people say, well, you don't know what happened to me. There's no blame on that. You're very valid. It was an experience that you may not have liked or understood. I get it. I've been there. But let's be clear about something. Experience is our best teacher, right? So it's safe to say that every experience gives us an opportunity to learn. So when I look back at my childhood experience, I have the choice now to say, that wasn't trauma. That was my curriculum. I had to go through that in order to fulfill my purpose today. I had to go through living in low income houses, surviving off government foods and food stamps and rats and roaches. And I had to go through all that stuff to learn how to present myself today to fulfill my purpose. I frame it like high school. We go through high school. In order to get through school, we got to go through certain grades. And the purpose of school is to what? Graduate. You want to graduate. That's the purpose. But you got to go through the second grade, the third grade, the fourth grade. You may not have liked some of the experiences. I know I didn't like algebra in the ninth grade. You may because I didn't understand it, just like life. There's going to be some experiences that you don't like, that you don't understand. But in order to fulfill the purpose, you got to go through that stuff and pull out the wisdom. So, childhood trauma is such a big thing that's, in my opinion, the culture has allowed us to hold other people accountable for some emotions, and rightfully so. There's no right or wrong answer to it. If you choose to identify as someone who has experienced childhood trauma, you're valid. You're very valid. Or you can choose to look at it as that was part of your curriculum. Either way, you're not wrong, but you will have a different experience, whatever you identify yourself as. You can identify as the victim of trauma, or you can identify yourself as the student of a curriculum of the experience. Either one, you're valid.
It didn't
Yeah,
happen to me, it happened for me. Because it happened for me, I can
absolutely.
graduate and become a better person.
That's exactly my words, my man. Life in itself is happening for us. It's just, when you think about life, it's just a series of different experiences every day throughout the day. We're having an experience right now, and you have a choice all have these choices to face each experience in two ways: become a victim of it, which is a space of fear, or become a student of it, which is in a frequency of love. Two frequencies: love, fear, student, victim. Two choices. Every experience gives us that option. Got to ask yourself, which one do you want to give your energy to? Because neither one of them is right or wrong. It just gives you a different experience in your reality. So when I put on I am aligned, that's essentially saying that I am in line with the power source within me, because I'm an energy being. And in order to use that energy, use that power, I must become a student, because guess what? Knowledge is power. Power is love. So as long as I'm aligned with that power source, I'm becoming a student of every experience. And this allows me to stay present, because oftentimes when you're in a space of fear, you're thinking about what happened or what could happen, right?
I was reading an article where they're talking about children who are going through trauma and it was impacting their their growth into
Yes.
adulthood. And one of the things that they did was it's called the superhero effect. And what they did is they said to the children, who's your favorite superhero? And they gave them
Mm,
capes. Some people are
okay.
Superman, some people are Batman, some people are Wonder Woman,
Yes.
some people are Supergirl. Whomever they wanted to be, they did that.
Okay.
What they found, to your point, is they went from an identity of someone who was traumatized, the victim, to their favorite superhero. And Martez,
Mm-hmm.
let me tell you, they performed in ways that people
Mm,
were so amazed because
yes.
they were empowered. They took
Yes.
off the victim identity, they put on the superhero, and I am Batman, and we all love Batman. And they could do whatever it is they want. And what I wanted to do is I started to share this with adults because I think with adults, sometimes we think that I'm too busy to be silly. I'm too busy to be have fun. I'm just gonna close the closet with my problems, go to work 16 hours and forget about it. Whereas you don't have to hold on to that identity. It's okay to
Right.
shed it. You're
Right.
not too old. You're not too divorced. You're not too single.
That's
You're
right.
not too
That's right.
anything for you or the people you come in contact with, why do you see so many people struggling with choosing an identity that could lead them to maybe the life or the outcomes that they so much want in life?
We are attached to our identities, and that attachment doesn't allow us to, because we most of us don't like change, like what's what's comfortable, what's safe. So the funny thing is, I just did a TikTok live about this, and I was speaking on identity. Every interaction, you're interacting with someone else's identity. And once we are mindful of the culture or the frequency that most people are living in or thriving, is fear. So that identity is attached to fear. And again, we talked about fear. When you're in this space of fear, it when it gets triggered, it allows this disconnection, these reactions. But when we want to change our identity, we must go back to how we see life and the things that we are aware of, our beliefs. I use some biblical text just just as a reference. Exodus 3:14. It states, "I am that I am," or "I am what I am," depending on what language you're reading it from. But it's essentially saying, I am aware. This is the awareness. That is whatever the identity you choose. You choose to be a victim or you choose to be a student. It really depends on the environment that you're in. Because our ego, which I say awareness, ego, subconscious, the ego does one job. It adapts, it gives us our identity. That's the that. I am that. I am this person. And I am will be the experience that you experience. I am that I am. Awareness, ego, subconscious gives us our experience. In order to change the experience, nothing changes if nothing changes. Go back to what it is you are aware of, looking at life as it happening for you. That allows you to be the student, that allows you to create a reality that's full of connections and not disconnections.
Fear, you talked about that quite a bit, and I 100% agree. Fear controls a lot in our
Yeah.
lives.
Yes.
Can the fear of change for the better because it's unknown be scary, whereas we stay the same because it's comfortable and we know that despite how unhealthy it is?
That's the truth about it. That's the unfortunate truth about it, that the fear of the unknown allows us to remain stuck, remain in a space of protect or safety. We all want to feel safe, but it starts with what it is that we are conscious of our environment. If we feel like it's danger, we're gonna keep that identity. We're gonna keep attached to the identity of a survival. There's a saying, I'm sure you may or may not be familiar with it. When you know better, what else? You do better.
You do better. When you know better, you do better. Amen, brother.
However, that's not always the truth, because more people will be in the gym working out. More people will be eating healthy. More people wouldn't yell at their kids. More people wouldn't have disconnections with their partners. So it's not about knowledge. Knowledge is not enough. We got plenty of knowledge. It boils down to identity. As long as you are identifying with that version of you, you will continue to have the same reality, the same reactions. So,
What if, for the person out there, what if they say themselves, Martez, I hear you. Terrain, I
mhm,
hear you. I want to make these changes, but if I make these changes, I don't think my friends can make this journey with me, and I don't want to be alone. I don't want to feel lonely. And many times, that healing journey, that journey away from fear, can be by yourself because sometimes we've I'll give you an example. I told
yes.
someone a couple of days ago where they're like, Terry, nothing good happens to me. You know, I see other people,
Mm,
they're living their life. I was like, one, it's not a competition. Don't compare your life to someone else. Compare to your life to what it used to be and what it is today and what it's going to be. The second thing is, how do you know that there isn't a person, place, or thing blocking you from seeing your blessings?
mhm.
And she was like, ooh. I was like, yeah. Do your friends want you to grow? Are they supportive? She's like, no. I was like, okay. Who celebrates you?
Mm.
She had no answer. I was like, well, if you don't think you're worthy of celebrating yourself, why would someone else celebrate you? What are your
Beautifully
thoughts on,
said.
yeah, what are your thoughts on a situation like that?
Beautifully said. My thoughts is that that's exactly what she's been taught, to look for that external validation, that external love. That's what most people have been taught. And until she is able to understand what it is that you told her, if you don't see the worth, then no one else will. And to become a, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I encourage people to stay curious about life, become a student about those emotions. Why don't you feel that you are enough? Where did you learn that from? This is all learned behavior. Behavior comes from a belief. And again, the beliefs are like the apps on his phone. Until you challenge, update, maybe even delete some of those beliefs, you're going to continue to get what you've always been getting. And if it doesn't feel good, then ask yourself the question, is there another version that allows me to experience a version that I do see my worth. And it is. Everything is in duality. If you are living in this version where you don't see your self-worth and you are seeking external validation, then there's also a version that doesn't do that. And it's your responsibility to tap into that version. So that's what I would that's those are my thoughts on that.
When it comes to patterns that we either get
Mm.
from our environment, maybe our parents, our experiences, how does that impact our relationships, especially the romantic ones?
Patterns are again attached to the beliefs, and we all have patterns that we are experiencing and living in, and we must look around, be and do an honest assessment. Are we experiencing disconnections, chaos, drama, dysfunction? If you could be like straight honest with yourself, if that's what your reality looks like at this current moment in your life, then it's important to trace that back to the beliefs, the frequency. This is all a fear-based frequency that you are living in. In order to change that, we must go back to the source, the beliefs. So,
I used to date a girl, since you mentioned the beliefs
mhm.
and self-worth. And it was at this time where I did spring cleaning of my friend groups, like I like to call it,
Okay,
right?
all right.
I think a lot of us have done that. It's like, oh my God, get away from me. You're irritating my spirit is irritating your demons type of thing.
Right, right.
Right? And then it was a point where when I would share news about my peer group, it was very positive, upbuilding. It was like, okay, this person's starting to plan this family. This person's gone back to school to do this. This person got a promotion, things like that. When she would talk about her peer group, it was drama and chaos.
Mm,
And I would listen because, you're in a relationship, you want to have the back and forth. And then one day, Martez, I sat back and I asked myself, I need to ask, why is this the primary representation of this group? Right? Because if I'm basing on what I'm hearing, I'm thinking, who want to be friends with these guys?
right,
Right?
right. Hmm.
Right? So I asked her, I was like, is there any news that isn't drama or chaotic? And she sat there,
Hmm.
and she sat there. I was like, oh, I was like, well, let me interject in the silence here because it's killing me.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, right. Okay.
And I said, the only time I hear about this group is in a negative light.
Mm,
I'm like, the fact that you are friends with them, there has to be something that's positive. She came up with nothing.
mm.
So then I asked the question, why are you friends with them then? If according to you, because I only know them through you,
Okay.
if they're this way. She's like, well, I've known them a long time. I was like, oh boy.
Hmm. Attach attachments that we talked
There
about.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So when we talk about attachment, I like using that example because sometimes people think that, well, this is my attachment style. I'm anxious, I'm avoidant, and so on.
Yes.
It could be that the person, place, or thing isn't serving you in the way that you want to be served, but you're attached to it.
Right.
And the question would be then that I have of people who are experiencing that, why are you attached to things that aren't serving you anymore? Right.
Hmm.
And to your point, do you think then it could be a fear of maybe I'm not worthy of better people or better friends? Could that be it?
Oh, absolutely. And that just ties back into what we were saying earlier about what fear does. Fear that I'm not worthy, fear that I don't belong, fear that people won't like me. And I remember, while you were telling your story, I was thinking of a one of the podcasts you did. Yeah, I did my homework on you, man. Make sure you were you knew your stuff.
Hey,
And
I have to represent some days, right? So
that's right. That's right. In one of your podcasts, you talked about people pleasing and how you were a former people pleaser. And listen to this story is one of the reasons that so many of us find ourselves with that identity of a people pleaser, because we have a fear that we may not be worthy and that we may not belong. And if I please the people around me, they'll accept me and I'll have a sense of belonging, a sense of worth. And it's all valid and it all goes back to this fear based mindset. But I want to challenge you as I continue to challenge myself because we've all have been there. People pleasing is just a branch on a big tree. Sure, you can stop the people pleasing. Yeah, that's fine. You just say, just feel like you've had enough. I'm going to start doing for me. But the challenge comes in, how and where did you even learn to show up in that space? Because people pleasing is the effect. What's the cause? What caused you to be in this space that I must take care of everyone else and not take care of myself? That goes back to fear, self-worth, things that we're not, that new life has never been introduced to. The self-love, the self-care, self-validation. So if you've never been introduced as a new life, the identity, the ego, the I am that I am adapts to this fear, and that fear doesn't allow you to see your self-worth. It doesn't allow you to put yourself on your list of loved ones. It doesn't allow you to validate yourself or respect yourself. So you look for everyone else to do it. And when they don't do it, those expectations, recipe for disappointment. Disappointment can lead to disconnection. Now you're disappointed that you didn't get the acceptance, the love, and the validation outside. So it just goes back to the roots. We must become students of why do we show up in this space of looking to please everyone? Why do we show up in this space where our self-worth is dependent upon a group of people to make me feel good? And like in the question that you asked the young lady, she wasn't able to answer it because she's so attached to the identity that I need these people. I need these people. That's why I can answer you, because it's going to challenge a part of me that I'm not ready to open up right now. So she was stuck and still, and that's in itself is fear itself. Because when the lights go out and it's dark, you stand still. You don't know what you don't want to move.
When you mentioned that people pleasing for me is a branch of a bigger tree, I know exactly where it came from. It was one of the ways that I could get attention, affection, and validation.
Yes.
And growing up, because I didn't have that, when I began to perform in that way, I would get it. So what do? You perform more. It becomes like a drug,
Yep.
right? Give
Yes.
me more. And attention and validation, that's like a narcotic for so many people these days. You look at
Oh,
social
yes.
media, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you'll have people compromise themselves in so many ways online that they would never think about doing in person.
Absolutely not. But you get those likes and comments, it gives you that sense of validation. And it's funny you say that. We were just talking about the saying, when you know better, you do better. Um, I just finished a book and it's titled Why, When We Know Better, Are We Still Not Able to Do Better? And I dive into the cause. Why is that? And you just reminded me something when you said that validation is like a drug. It is. And we've been getting it since day one. We've been celebrated just for coming into life. Now you think about a birthday. Now, this is in my book, and I talk about your very first birthday. Up until you're born, let's just be clear that it was all about the woman, the mother. Congratulations, and the father. Sometimes we get a little praise, but it's all about the woman, rightfully so. Accommodating her, congratulating her, right? The moment she has the baby, it no longer is about her. It's all about the new life, rightfully so. But here's what happens. For example, birthdays. We all like to celebrate our birthdays. This is something that's normal. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating. But what happens when someone doesn't show up for you in the way you would like them to have showed up on your birthday? What if no one said happy birthday to you? What if no one showed you the acknowledgement? It hurts. We have an emotion attached to it because we got so attached to that validation of not doing anything, but just begin, just having life. We are celebrating for having life. But then you think about school, we get the validation, we get the love, we get a version of people that shows up and makes us feel good when we do good. And we love it. We love it so much. It's like a drug, and we look for it in every relationship, in every interaction. We want people to validate us, show me respect, show me love and attention. You know why? Because no one never told you that it was already inside of you. So you're looking for love in all the wrong places. It was already inside of you. But no one ever told us that. So it shows up as people pleasing. It shows up as hanging out with people that, you know, obviously are in their own dysfunctional pattern, but it doesn't matter as long as I belong with someone. No fault, no blame, but it is our responsibility to do better once we become aware that we were never taught these things.
External validation is such a trap, and I see
Mm.
people become imprisoned in it. You reminded me of someone I went to college with,
Okay.
and later on in life, in her 30s, so on, she posted a picture that my baby was born, and a lot of people thought it was hers, so they started congratulating her, and like, no, my sister gave birth.
Okay.
Okay, so people started congratulating the sister, and I remember speaking to her as she brought it up. I was like, "Oh yeah, tell your sister congratulations on her newborn." She's like, "You're not gonna congratulate me?"
Mm.
I was like, "What did you do?" You
See,
know,
see,
right? She
right?
because it caught me off guard, right? Like usually, I don't think I've ever heard that question before, right? Like it's
Yes.
like if I post a picture of your like if you have children, if you have a child being born, and then I want to be congratulated because you had the child, right? And she's like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yes." I was like, "I don't understand what you want me to congratulate you for.
Hmm.
Is it your kid
Right.
or like were you the surrogate?" You know, and here I am trying to like validate and justify the insanity that's in front
Yeah.
of me,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You know, I'm like, I'm asking these questions. She's like, "No." She's like, "But it's part of my family." I was like,
Mm.
"There's other ways
Hmm. Right. Right.
to celebrate yourself, right? You don't need to try to piggyback off of someone's moment." And I do
Yes.
see that sometimes where you'll have someone that always wanted to be celebrated in their life
Yes.
and they haven't been, but the people around them have been. So what they do is they stand next to that person. Hopefully some of that celebration will rub off on
Right.
them. What role then do you think that maybe insecurity
Mm.
or lack thereof plays in someone's self-worth?
Insecurities in itself is rooted once again in fear, not feeling safe, not feeling seen, not feeling. When you think about someone when they want to feel seen and heard, it's because they don't feel safe. Like if I'm in danger and no one sees or hear me, I'm scared. But if you see me, you can hear me, I feel safe. So many of us are operating in this space of fear of no one seeing us, no one can hear us. So every opportunity I get to be seen and heard, I must take advantage of that opportunity, whether it's on social media whether it's part of someone else's new life, celebrating them. Hey, what about me? Congratulate me. But when you said, there are other ways, and that's true. But here's the thing with that individual, to learn her story, she was probably the little girl who wasn't seen at home, never felt validated at home. Maybe the parents, were divorced, or, whatever was going on in her childhood, that she felt she did not get the validation. Now she's a grown adult, and now it shows up in comments like, what about me? She's been wondering, what about me, since she was about 6 or 7 years old. And because it shows up in this interaction with you, you can do the same thing. We can look at her and say, girl, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like that? And it causes us to disconnect. Early on, we first got on our podcast, on this podcast, we talked about every experience is an opportunity to learn. That experience with that young lady was an opportunity to learn more about her journey. Why is she like this? It was an opportunity to learn or not. But when you're not in a space of learning, by default, we judge. We look at them like, oh man, she always wants some attention. What's wrong with her? She always seeking validation. We begin to judge the behavior, right? Causing misunderstandings at times because no one likes to be judged. But it was just that. It was a missed opportunity to learn about this individual. Knowledge is power, power is love. You're not looking to learn, now you're looking to judge. Judging is a fear-based mindset. So it's always something for us to learn. For in that young lady's situation, yeah, she just looking to get the love and the validation that no one has never told her that it was already inside of you. So most of us go through this entire reality searching for that validation in any ways we can. You talked about social media. Yeah, that's just one way of doing it, but it shows up in the coffee shop. It shows up while we're driving. We blowing the horns. We're mad, and we want to be seen because it makes us feel safe. We all can say to a certain degree that we are living with some insecurities, right? Insecurities is the opposite of being secure, being safe. That means you are afraid or you are in fear. I talk about insecurities a lot because, I don't know if you noticed, well, you had to notice, I'm a black guy with white hands, right? Vitiligo was one of my biggest insecurities. Insecurities are rooted in fear. And when fear is triggered, what we do, we look to control the situations, the circumstances, the outcomes. My fear allowed me to control what you see when I left outside. I would cover my arms up, I would put makeup on my face. That was my way of controlling what you saw. That was the insecurity. I didn't feel safe enough to have exposed my skin. And skin for me, but for so many others, maybe their bodies, their stomachs. That's a huge one because I've been a fitness gym owner for about 20 years. That's one of the number one insecurities that most people have is their bodies. But yeah, insecurities are huge, man. Going back to your point.
I'm glad you raised that because that's why I was asking her those questions. And I was
Mhm.
glad I was able to understand her a little bit better because,
Yes.
to your point, she did have a difficult childhood because the accomplishments of that person that had the child would always eclipse hers. So she was always in that person's shadow. So
Okay.
the only way for her to get some shine was to stand by her brightness at that
Yeah.
point in time until she created her own family.
Okay.
And then when she created her own family, she had her own little mini community. Because she had her own community, she was celebrated in the ways that She wanted to be. She was becoming recognized. The only unfortunate thing is that it did create a divide between the two people. But maybe that could be that that's her boundary in a
Mm-hmm.
sense that if I place that boundary, it puts me in a situation where I'm not going to behave that way because that other person deserves to be celebrated as well.
Mm, gotcha.
Right. So I think to your point, yes, it's always easy to dismiss someone. Oh my God, that person's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It is very easy to do that because, that's what we've been taught. We heard our parents judge and shame other people. And so this is normal way of talking or normal way of uh, experiencing people is to find out or label them and call them crazy and things like that. But I wanted to tap into what you just said. It changed when she began to have a family. And sometimes that happens. When you are having a different experience in life, it changes you. The challenge would be that pattern that we talked about earlier, that belief is still with you, and it becomes your identity, it becomes your frequency, and now that pattern becomes the blueprint for your family, that household still thriving on that same frequency of seeking the validation, because this is what she learned. Having a different experience, if you're not mindful of the pattern or the frequency that you are vibing on or vibing on, you're just gonna repeat that with your family now, with her family in that case.
So, Martez, let me ask you one final question before I let you go. I want to give you
Mhm.
three wishes for this question.
Three
What are
wishes. All
three
right.
things? Yeah, yeah, you can wish for anything but
Okay.
more money.
All right.
What are three things you wish people knew about overcoming fear? Actually, let me rephrase that. What are three things you wish people knew about identifying fear and overcoming it?
The three things that would allow people to identify. It's just really just look at your reality, your current reality. I kind of touched on this earlier. When you look at your current reality, is it the reality that you feel is aligned in alignment? Is this the reality that you desire? And if not, understand this one key element that whatever you identify with or as creates your reality. For example, when I owned a gym, if I say I am a trainer, then my reality would look like someone who is a trainer, a personal trainer. So going back to the identity, if you want a different experience in life, you want a different reality, kind of, tie in back to what we talked about a little while ago about becoming the identity that you desire or the outcome that gives you the desired outcome that you want. So that's one thing that I would definitely want people to uh, understand, that it's all about your identity. Now, the other thing is to also understand that there's no fault or blame, because even that allows you to be this victim in this and stand in this fear-based mindset. So to understand that it's no blame, no fault, but it's about awareness, being aware that I was never taught anything other than this fear-based mindset that allows me to blame and judge and criticize people. So if that's the case, then I'm responsible to learn from the experience, which ultimately allows me to become this student that we talked about earlier and changing the reality that I'm currently having.